Pretend you're my wife for 1 minute, the tall man whispered as I stood shaking beside a luggage cart at Dubai International Airport, my purse clutched to my chest like it was the last safe thing I had left in the world. My driver is coming. Stay close to me, smile if you can, and trust me. By tonight, your daughter will regret everything she did. My knees nearly gave out right there on that shining airport floor. Just 1 hour earlier, I had found out my ticket was cancelled, my phone had been blocked, and my own daughter had left me stranded in a country I had never visited before. I was 72 years old, alone, frightened, and too embarrassed to cry in public. So why was this stranger helping me, and how did he know enough to promise that Emily would regret betraying me? My name is Martha Bell, and until that day I still believed that love from a child meant safety. I know that sounds foolish now. When people meet me, they usually say I seem cheerful. I am the kind of woman who bakes too much banana bread, saves birthday cards in little boxes, and still writes important phone numbers on paper, just in case. I was a school librarian in Ohio for 34 years. I raised one daughter, Emily, mostly by myself after my husband, Daniel, passed away from a heart attack when Emily was only 12. I gave that girl everything I had. I do not mean that in the dramatic way people say it when they want pity. I mean it plainly. I worked extra hours. I sold my jewelry when she wanted to go to college out of state. I skipped buying a new car for 8 years so I could help with her rent after she lost a job in Chicago. When she got married and then divorced 3 years later, I opened my home again and let her stay with me for 7 months. I held her when she cried. I fed her. I told her she was not broken. And when she said, "Mom, I want to make things special for you now," I believed her. That was how Dubai entered my life. It began 6 weeks earlier, on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. I was in my kitchen rinsing blueberries when Emily called me in a voice so sweet it almost made me laugh. "Mom," she said, "don't say no before I finish." "That usually means I should say no," I replied. She laughed, and for a moment she sounded like the little girl who used to wear pigtails and leave crayons in my couch cushions. "I'm serious," she said. "I got invited to a luxury brand event in Dubai through work. It's all paid for. I can bring one guest. I want it to be you." I nearly dropped the bowl into the sink. "Me?" I asked. "Yes, you," she said. "You've never really traveled. You always said you wanted to see something beautiful and different. Consider this my thank you for everything." No mother forgets a sentence like that. For everything. I sat down at the kitchen table because my legs had gone weak. I asked her to repeat herself. She did. She told me the hotel would be beautiful. She told me the weather would be warm. She told me she would take care of everything, flights, bags, pickup. She even said, "Mom, all you have to do is show up and let me spoil you." I cried after the call ended. Not because of Dubai. Because I thought I had my daughter back. Over the next few weeks, Emily became more attentive than she had been in years. She called every other day. She asked about my blood pressure medicine. She told me which shoes to pack. She even mailed me a new suitcase, pale blue with little gold wheels, because she said my old brown one looked like it had fought in a war. I should have noticed something then. When people change too fast, there is usually a reason. But loneliness can make a person accept almost anything that feels like love. The trip was supposed to last 5 days. Emily said she had business meetings during the mornings, but the afternoons and evenings would be ours. Desert dinner, shopping, tea at a fancy hotel, maybe even a boat ride. She made it sound like the kind of dream that only happened to rich people in movies. I told my church friend Gloria all about it. Gloria pressed her lips together and gave me that look good friends give when they want to be gentle and honest at the same time. "Martha," she said, "I'm happy for you, but are you sure this isn't one of Emily's moods?" I frowned. What's that supposed to mean? Gloria folded a dish towel and leaned against the counter. "It means your daughter can be wonderful when she wants something." I did not answer her, because the truth had already knocked softly on my heart. Emily had always been bright and charming. She knew how to walk into a room and make people like her. She also knew how to bend stories until they fit what she wanted. When she was 17, she told her principal I had forgotten to sign a field trip form, when really she had hidden it under her mattress because she knew I would not approve. At 28, she borrowed money from me for emergency dental work, then later posted smiling beach photos from Miami. When I confronted her, she cried and said she was ashamed, and I forgave her. That was our pattern. Emily crossed a line. I forgave her. She crossed another. I forgave that too. Maybe that is why the worst betrayals do not begin with shouting, they begin with old habits. The morning of our flight, Emily arrived at my house in a black town car. She looked polished and expensive in cream pants, sunglasses, and a silk scarf at her neck. She kissed my cheek and said, "Ready, Mom." I smiled so hard my face hurt. At the airport in Ohio, she handled everything. She kept our passports. She held the boarding information. She told me not to worry about a thing. We flew business class, something I had never experienced before. Emily took pictures of the little dishes of food, the seats that lay flat, and me trying to figure out the fancy controls. She even posted one of us together. My daughter leaned against me smiling, while I looked half shocked and half delighted. My friends back home commented, "You two look wonderful." I was foolish enough to think we really were. Dubai was bright, polished, and enormous. Even the airport looked richer than some neighborhoods. People moved quickly, dragging shining suitcases behind them. Screens glowed everywhere. Perfume floated through the air. My head spun from the lights and the noise and how far from home I felt. Emily stayed calm, too calm. She took my arm and guided me through the crowd like she had done it 100 times before. I asked where our driver was. She said, "Just follow me." I asked for my passport. She said, "I'm holding everything so you don't lose it." I asked what hotel we were staying in. She said, "Mom, breathe, you ask too many questions when you're nervous." That hurt, but I laughed it off. We stopped near a cafe inside the airport. Emily checked her phone, then checked it again. Her jaw tightened. I noticed that. "Is everything okay?" I asked. "Fine." She snapped, then softened her tone. "Just work stuff." She walked a few steps away to take a call. I sat with the luggage and watched her from a distance. Her voice became sharp, not loud but sharp. She turned her back to me as if she did not want me reading her face. When she returned, she forced a smile. "Small change of plans," she said. "I need to step out and meet someone connected to the event. It'll only take a few minutes. Stay right here." "I'll come with you," I said. "No," she answered too quickly. "It's boring business nonsense." She placed one hand on my shoulder. "Mom, please just sit, I'll be back before you know it." Then she wheeled her carry-on away and disappeared into the crowd. I waited. 10 minutes, 20, 45, then 1 hour. My chest grew tight. I called her phone. It rang once, then went dead. I tried again, blocked. My hands went cold. I stood and went to the nearest airline counter, dragging my suitcase behind me. I explained that I was looking for my daughter and wanted to confirm our return flight information, just so I would feel better. The woman behind the counter typed for a moment, then frowned. "Ma'am," she said carefully, "your return ticket was cancelled this morning." I stared at her. "That can't be right," I said. "My daughter booked it." She typed again. "It appears the cancellation came from the booking account. Also, I'm sorry, but there is no active hotel booking attached to your profile either." My mouth fell open. "No hotel," I whispered. She shook her head. The airport noise around me faded into a blur. It felt like the whole world had stepped backward and left me standing alone in a spotlight. I tried Emily again, blocked. I checked my bank app with trembling fingers. 2 large transfers I did not recognize had been attempted from my account that morning. One had gone through. That was the moment I understood. This trip had never been a gift. It had been a trap. I sank onto a metal chair and covered my mouth with one hand to keep from making a sound. I felt old in a way I never had before. Not wrinkled old, not slow old, betrayed old, used old, the kind of old that makes cruel people think you won't fight back because your heart is too tired. I do not know how long I sat there before I heard a man's voice say, very quietly, "Mrs. Bell." I looked up fast. A tall man in a dark grey suit stood in front of me. He was handsome in a clean, serious way, maybe in his early 50s, with silver at his temples and eyes that missed nothing. Behind him stood 2 other men who looked like security. I tightened my grip on my purse. "Do I know you?" He glanced toward the terminal entrance, then back at me. "No," he said, but I know exactly what your daughter has done." My heart thudded so hard I could hear it. Before I could speak, he leaned closer and said the words that changed everything. "Act like you're my wife for 1 minute," he whispered. "My driver is coming, and trust me, she will regret what she did." And at that exact moment, I saw Emily in the distance turning around, staring straight at me with a look on her face that was not guilt. It was fear. Emily had never looked afraid of me before. Annoyed, yes. Impatient many times. Embarrassed, especially when I asked too many questions in public. But afraid? Never. Yet there she was across the airport, frozen beside a glossy column, her phone still in her hand, staring at the man standing next to me as if she had just seen a ghost walk out of a locked room. The man did not turn around to look at her. He kept his eyes on me. "Please," he said in a calm, low voice. "We do not have much time. Take my arm," smile just enough to make it believable. I should tell you that I was not brave in that moment. My legs were weak. My mouth was dry. My thoughts were crashing into one another so fast I could hardly catch one and hold it still. I did not understand who this man was. I did not know how he knew my name. I did not know what Emily had done beyond leaving me stranded, blocking my calls, and somehow reaching into my bank account. But I understood one thing very clearly. My daughter was afraid of him. And after the way she had used me, part of me wanted to know why. So I slipped my trembling hand through the crook of his arm. He gave me the smallest nod, not warm, not cold, just steady, like a person carrying out a plan he trusted. "There," he murmured, "very good." His hand rested lightly over mine, respectful, careful, nothing improper about it. One of the security men stepped forward and took hold of my blue suitcase. The other moved a half step behind us. We began walking through the airport together, as if this were normal, as if I had not been crying inside only moments before. As we moved, the man leaned toward me just enough to speak without being overheard. "My name is Victor Hale," he said. "Do not react strongly when I tell you this. Your daughter has been working with someone who has been trying to get access to my company through a financial scheme. Tonight that scheme ends." I stared straight ahead. "My daughter is an event planner," I whispered. "No," he said softly. "She told you she was. She has been freelancing around wealthy clients, collecting personal information, and passing it to a man named Brent Lawson. Brent uses other people's names, passwords, and banking details to set up fake investment routes. He also targets older people through family connections, because older people are often trusting." I almost pulled my hand away, but Victor closed his fingers gently over mine. "Keep walking," he said. The floor under me felt unsteady. "No," I whispered. "No, Emily would never." "She already did," Victor said, still calm. "The transfer attempt from your account was not random. She needed funds moved fast. She believed leaving you here would buy her time." Those words hit harder than anything else. She believed leaving you here would buy her time. Not an accident. Not a misunderstanding. A choice. My own daughter had not just hurt me, she had calculated around me. I swallowed hard and forced myself not to turn and look for her. "How do you know all this?" Victor's face did not change, but his voice became slightly sharper. "Because Brent Lawson tried the same thing with one of my companies 6 months ago. We tracked the pattern. New assistants, event workers, social introductions, travel confusion, older relatives with savings, fast cancellations, blocked phones. Different names, same structure." A chill ran through me. That was why he knew. That was why Emily had looked terrified. She had not left me behind just to be cruel. She had left me behind because I was part of a bigger lie. We stepped outside into the warm Dubai evening, where the air felt like it had been heated by a giant hand. Sleek cars rolled past, men in uniforms opened doors, lights glittered on polished glass walls. Everything looked beautiful and expensive, and I had never felt smaller. A long black car pulled to the curb. Victor opened the back door for me himself. "Get in, Mrs. Bell," he said. "You are safe with me." I hesitated. I wish I could tell you I climbed in because I trusted him. That would sound noble and clean, but the truth is I climbed in because I had nowhere else to go. And sometimes when life corners you, your courage is simply choosing the safer stranger over the dangerous familiar face. Inside the car, the air was cool and the seats smelled faintly of leather. My blue suitcase was placed in the trunk. One security man sat in front. Victor got in beside me, leaving a respectful space between us. The car moved away from the airport. For the first minute I could not speak. Then the tears came. I turned my face away and pressed my fingers to my eyes, embarrassed even then. I hated crying in front of strangers. Victor did not stare at me or offer dramatic comfort. He reached into a console, took out a small clean handkerchief and placed it beside me. "Use that," he said, "and breathe." I let out an ugly little laugh through my tears. "You sound like a doctor." "No," he said, "just someone who has watched panic do damage." I dabbed my face. Why help me? That question had been burning in me since he first said my name. Victor looked out the window before answering. The city lights flickered across his face. Because when my mother was alive, my younger brother used her trust to steal from her. She covered for him until the day she died. I was too late to stop it. I do not like being too late. His words settled over me quietly. I turned toward him. "My Emily wasn't always like this," I said, and immediately hated how weak that sounded, like I was defending the very person who had just destroyed me. Victor did not mock me. "Most people who do terrible things were not born doing them," he said, "but they still choose them." That silenced me. The car drove through roads lined with lights and tall buildings that shone like silver towers. It should have felt magical. Instead, I kept replaying every detail of the last few weeks. The new suitcase, the sweet phone calls, the careful planning, the way Emily kept my passport, the way she said, "Stay right here." I had thought she was kidding me. She was positioning me. A lump rose in my throat again. "She told me this trip was her thank you," I whispered. Victor looked at me fully then, and for the first time his expression softened. "People who manipulate often wrap their traps in kindness," he said. "That is what makes the betrayal so painful." I pressed the handkerchief in my lap. Did she really steal from me? "She had your banking details," he said. "We believe she got them when she helped you with those online bill payments you mentioned to the airline agent. Brent then used those details to test transfers. One succeeded, 2 were flagged. That is why the process moved faster today." I remembered it clearly. 2 months earlier my home internet had been acting strangely. Emily came over, sat at my kitchen table and said, "Mom, let me help. You always get nervous with this stuff." She had smiled while taking my phone, my banking app, my email. I had even thanked her. The shame of that memory made my stomach hurt. "Did you hear that?" Victor asked suddenly. I blinked. "Hear what?" He tilted his head toward the front. A phone was ringing. The security man in the passenger seat held up a second phone, one I had not noticed before. "Sir," he said, "it's her." Victor held out his hand, put it on speaker. My heart started pounding again. The line clicked open, and Emily's voice burst into the car. "Victor, wait," she said, sounding breathless. "You don't understand what this looks like." Victor's face became unreadable. "I understand perfectly." "Please," Emily said, "don't involve her, she doesn't know anything." That sentence hurt me more than if she had insulted me. Not because it was false. Because she was right. "I didn't know anything." Victor answered in a flat, controlled voice. "You used your own mother as cover." "It wasn't supposed to go this far," Emily said quickly. "Brent said she'd just be delayed for a few hours while we fixed the transfer trail and moved the funds." The car became very quiet. There it was. The truth, plain and ugly. Not a mix-up. Not confusion. A plan. My daughter had knowingly left me stranded in a foreign airport so she could help steal money and hide the trail. I covered my mouth. I do not know whether Emily heard the tiny sound I made, but her next words came out in a rush. Mom, are you there?" Victor looked at me once, asking without asking. I took a shaky breath. "Yes," I said. Silence. Then Emily whispered, "Mom, I can explain." "No," I said, surprising even myself with how firm I sounded. "You can start by telling the truth." Her voice cracked. "It started with debt." I shut my eyes. "Of course, debt." Months ago, Emily had changed jobs twice. She had started dressing better, spending more posting photos in restaurants I knew she could not afford. When I asked, she laughed and said networking mattered. I wanted to believe she was finally doing well. I wanted it so badly that I ignored the signs. Emily kept talking, words tumbling over one another. After the divorce, I had credit cards, loans, and then Brent offered me a way to make easy money. At first it was small things, guest lists, travel info, client routines. Then it got bigger. "And me?" I asked. She did not answer for 2 full seconds. "That was answer enough. You were supposed to be temporary," she said at last, voice shaking. "You were never supposed to get hurt." I let out a broken little laugh. There are lies so cruel they sound silly, once the truth is standing in front of them. Temporary. As if leaving your elderly mother trapped in another country was a small inconvenience. As if panic, humiliation and betrayal did not count because bruises were not visible. Victor took the phone from the air between us and spoke before I could. "You have one chance," he said. "You and Brent will come to the Palm Meridian Hotel. Private lounge, top floor, 90 minutes. Bring the devices, account keys and transfer records. If you do not, everything goes to the authorities, to your employer contacts and to every bank you touched." Emily gasped softly. "You set this up." Victor's voice hardened. "No, you did." He ended the call. I sat very still. The Palm Meridian Hotel rose ahead of us like something from a dream, all gold light and glass. Men in suits moved at the entrance. A fountain shimmered in front. My reflection flashed briefly in the car window, and I barely recognized the woman looking back at me. Her hair was neat. Her blouse was still pressed, but her face looked as if the day had carved 10 new years into it. Victor must have noticed, because he said quietly, "Do not confuse being wounded with being weak." I looked down at my hands. "I feel weak," I admitted. "That feeling will pass," he said. "The truth usually comes before strength." The car rolled to a stop under the hotel entrance. A porter opened the door. Victor got out first and then turned to help me. This time, when I placed my hand in his, I was not pretending for Emily's sake. I was steadying myself for what came next. Inside, the lobby gleamed with marble and flowers and soft music. A woman at the desk greeted Victor by name. He guided me past the front desk, into a private elevator, and up to a quiet lounge with high windows looking out over the city. There were only a few chairs, one long table, and 2 security guards already waiting inside. Victor motioned for me to sit. "Would you like tea?" he asked. The normalness of the question almost made me cry again. "Yes," I whispered. While a server poured tea, Victor placed a folder on the table in front of me. "You should see this before she arrives." I stared at the folder. "What is it?" "Copies," he said. "Transfers, messages, notes, your daughter's part in the plan." My hand froze over the cover. I did not want to open it, because sometimes the last bit of hope lives in not looking. But I opened it anyway. The first page was bad enough. The second made my breath catch. By the third page, I realized Emily had not only planned to use me. She had planned something even worse after the money cleared. And when the lounge doors suddenly opened, and I heard my daughter's high heels click across the floor, I knew the night was about to become far more terrible than I had imagined. And right here before the next truth drops, this is the kind of moment where people usually lean closer and whisper, "No way, what was on that third page?" If this story is pulling you in, this is the perfect place to like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss what happens when Emily finally faces everything she tried to hide. The sound of Emily's heels on the hotel floor made my whole body tighten. Click, click, click. Each step felt like a countdown to something awful. I was still holding the folder open in my lap, but my eyes had stopped moving over the page. They were stuck on one sentence near the bottom, the sentence that had turned the room cold around me. Relocation risk solved if subject remains abroad for 72 hours. Subject. That was me. Not Mom, not Martha, not a person. A subject. My daughter had written it in a message thread with Brent Lawson, the man Victor said had built this whole scam around older people and family access. The message was short, neat, and businesslike. It was not written in panic or anger. It was written the way someone might talk about delayed luggage or changing a dinner reservation. Relocation risk solved if subject remains abroad for 72 hours. If I stayed trapped in Dubai for 3 days, they would have enough time to move the stolen money, change records, and make it look like I had chosen to disappear with it. That was the even worse thing. They were not just planning to abandon me. They were planning to use my name as the fall person. My throat burned. When Emily stepped fully into the lounge, she stopped so suddenly that one heel skidded slightly on the polished floor. She had changed since the airport. Her scarf was gone. Her hair, which had been smooth and glossy earlier, now looked rushed, like she had been running her hands through it again and again. Her lipstick was fading around the edges. Brent Lawson came in behind her, and one look at him made me understand exactly why Victor had called him dangerous. He was not big, he was not loud. He was one of those men who looked ordinary on purpose. Mid-40s, tan jacket, expensive watch, clean nails, an easy face that probably made people trust him too quickly. But his eyes were wrong. They were cold and alert, always measuring. Victor remained standing near the table. I stayed seated, though I wanted to rise and demand answers right away. My legs would not have held me anyway. Brent gave a small smile that did not touch his eyes. "Mrs. Bell," he said, as if we were meeting at a church brunch instead of in the middle of a betrayal. "I'm sorry you got dragged into confusion." Confusion. That word nearly made me laugh. Emily looked at me then, and for one quick second I saw something real in her face. Not guilt exactly, Maury-like fear mixed with shame, but it vanished fast, covered by the same defensive tension I had seen in her since she was a teenager caught in a lie. "Mom," she said softly, "please let me explain before you believe everything in that folder." I lifted the pages and held them up slightly. My hand shook but my voice did not. "You mean before I believe your own messages?" Emily flinched. Victor spoke before she could. "Sit down, both of you." Brent stayed standing. "I think we can keep this civilized." One of Victor's security men shifted closer to the door. Brent noticed, and after a pause he sat. Emily lowered herself into a chair across from me. Not too close, not too far, like she had not yet decided whether I was someone she needed to comfort or someone she needed to manage. That hurt in a way I cannot fully explain. A child can wound you simply by forgetting how to be your child. For a few moments nobody spoke. The city lights behind the glass windows shimmered over all of us. Beautiful view, ugly truth. Then I did something I had never really done with Emily before. I asked the question and refused to soften it. "Were you going to leave me in this country and make it look like I stole the money?" Emily opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Brent jumped in. That was never the plan. Victor turned his head slowly, careful. Brent leaned back in his chair. "Fine, it was one possible version of the cleanup, but only if things got messy." I stared at him. The cleanup. That was what he called ruining my life. Emily's eyes filled suddenly. "Mom, I didn't want that part." "You wrote it," I said. Her shoulders dropped. "I know." I felt something inside me crack, not loudly but deeply. There is a point in betrayal when pain stops being sharp and becomes heavy. It settles in your chest like a stone. It does not scream. It simply sits there, changing the shape of everything. Victor placed both hands on the back of a chair and looked from Brent to Emily. "Here is what is going to happen. You will explain the full structure. You will hand over every device, every login, every routing note, every transfer key. Then I decide whether the next call is to my legal team or the Dubai police." Brent let out a breath through his nose, almost amused. "You act like you already won." Victor's face did not change. "I usually do." I should not admit this, but that line nearly made me smile. It was so dry, so plain, and it landed like a stone on water. Even in that dark moment, it gave me one tiny breath of relief. Emily rubbed her hands together. "Brent, just tell him." Brent turned to her sharply. "No, you tell him since your mother is here." And that right there told me more than any folder had. Brent was not protecting Emily. He was using her. Emily took a shaky breath and looked at me. "After my divorce, things got bad fast, worse than I told you." I said nothing. She swallowed. I had rent debt, credit cards, a car loan. Then I lost my job and started doing event work. That's where I met Brent. At first it was small stuff, client schedules, contact info, who was traveling, who was careless, who used assistants, who liked to show off. He paid well. I told myself it wasn't stealing. I told myself rich people wouldn't even notice. Her voice trembled, then one thing led to another. That sentence again, the sentence people use when they want sin to sound accidental. One thing did not lead to another, I said quietly. You kept saying yes. Emily's mouth tightened, and I saw tears gather, but I did not rescue her from them. She nodded. Yes, she whispered. I kept saying yes. Brent folded his hands. Now we're getting honest. Victor's eyes flicked toward him. You are in no position to be pleased. Emily continued. Brent started targeting people around Victor's business circle, not directly, through family, vendors, travel assistants, event lists. The goal was always the same. Get enough personal information to open pathways into accounts, delays, approvals, insurance holds, private wires, anything that could move money before someone noticed. She looked at me again, and I wish she had not, because the part she said next felt like a knife placed carefully between my ribs. You were useful because you trusted me. I lowered my eyes. That was the plain truth of it. Not because I was foolish in general. Because I trusted my daughter in the places where mothers keep their guard down. My phones, my passwords, my stories, my loneliness. Victor asked why the ticket cancellation. Emily answered, because the transfer window got moved up. Brent found a chance to move a large amount through shell accounts tied to a vendor conflict. But if my mother returned home too soon, there was a risk she'd see the bank alert, call somebody, or tell her friends before we could finish burying the trail. My stomach turned. So Gloria had been right. My instincts had been right. Every quiet little warning inside me had been right, and I had pushed them down because love is not just blind sometimes. It is hopeful. And hope in the wrong hands can be milked dry. Victor tapped the folder. Tell Mrs. Bell about the 72-hour note. Emily shut her eyes. Brent answered for her. It was insurance. Victor's voice went flat. Use smaller words, she deserves the truth. Brent leaned back. If the money moved cleanly, we wanted a person to point to, someone older, someone confused, someone with a travel history attached to the timing, someone who could plausibly be painted as overwhelmed, forgetful, or manipulated by someone else. Her being stranded abroad made the timing useful. I looked at him so hard my eyes hurt. You were going to ruin my name, I said. He gave a tiny shrug. Only if necessary. It is strange what the heart notices in such moments. Not the whole man, not even the whole sentence, just one terrible little phrase. Only if necessary. As if the destruction of a life could ever be neat enough to fit inside business language. Emily broke then. Stop talking like that, she cried, turning on Brent. I told you not to say it that way. Victor's eyebrows lifted slightly. I understood. Emily had known exactly what was happening. She just did not like hearing it out loud. I looked at her and spoke as calmly as I could. You did not stop it. Her eyes snapped back to mine. I know. No, I said. Listen carefully. You are crying because it sounds ugly now, but ugly things were still ugly when you were planning them. That landed, I saw it land. Emily's whole face crumpled, and for a second she looked like the little girl who once scraped her knee and ran to me sobbing in the front yard. But children cry because they are hurt. Adults sometimes cry because they have finally run out of places to hide. Victor took a seat at last. There's another piece, he said. Tell her about the passports. I frowned. Passports. Emily's breathing went shallow. Brent muttered, this is pointless. Victor's gaze sharpened. No, this is complete. Emily slowly opened her handbag and took out a small envelope. My passport was inside. So was my return itinerary. And underneath those was a second paper I had never seen before. A report request form for medical welfare intervention. My fingers went numb. What is that? I asked. Emily could barely look at me. Brent said, If anyone questioned why you were disoriented or unreachable, we could say stress had caused an episode, that you were showing memory issues, that you had wandered. For one wild second, I truly could not speak. Wandered. They had prepared to paint me as unstable, old, confused, lost. And because I was a grandmother, because I was soft-spoken, because I still wrote numbers on paper and asked people to repeat flight details slowly, there would be people who believed it. My whole body went cold. Victor looked at Brent with a kind of quiet disgust I will never forget. You build your scams around cruelty disguised as logistics. Brent did not answer. I did. I leaned forward and said, You picked the wrong old woman. The room fell very still. Even Emily looked surprised. I was surprised too. But something had changed in me over those last hours. Grief was still there, shock was still there, but now another thing had joined them. Anger. Not wild anger, not shouting anger. Clear anger. The kind that wipes tears from your face and tells your spine to sit up straight. Victor nodded once almost approvingly. Good. Emily whispered, Mom. I held up a hand. No, you listen now. And for the first time in a very long time, she did. I buried your father, I said. I worked while grieving. I sold jewelry to keep you in school. I took you back into my house after your marriage fell apart. I stood beside you every time life knocked you down. And this is what you did with my trust. You used my age as camouflage. You used my love as cover. Emily was crying openly now. I was desperate. Yes, I said, and instead of asking for help, you chose evil. That word hung in the air. Evil. I do not use it lightly. But some things deserve their names. Brent pushed his chair back slightly. This is turning emotional, and that's never helpful. Victor gave one tiny nod toward the guards. They moved immediately. One stepped behind Brent, the other blocked the door fully. Brent froze. Victor's voice stayed calm. The moment for your preferences has passed. Then he turned to Emily. Phones, laptop, the storage key. With shaking hands, she placed her phone on the table. Then another phone. Then a slim silver flash drive from her purse. Brent hesitated too long. One guard extended his hand. Brent gave over his phone at last, jaw tight. Victor slid everything toward himself but did not touch the devices right away. Now for the last question, who else is in it? Emily looked confused. What? Victor leaned forward. This operation is too broad for just the two of you. Who else had access to Mrs. Bell's records, travel details and transfer timing? Emily's face drained of color. Brent cursed under his breath. And I suddenly knew, before anyone said a word, that the answer was going to hurt me almost as much as my daughter's betrayal. Emily looked at me with horror in her eyes and whispered, Mom, there's something else I haven't told you. There are truths that wound you all at once. Then there are truths that arrive slowly like footsteps in a dark hallway, each one making you dread the next. Emily's face had gone pale. Brent looked furious. Victor sat very still, the way people do when they already know the answer but want to hear you say it yourself. My hands were folded tightly in my lap. If I let go, I thought they might start shaking again. What else? I asked. Emily swallowed so hard I saw her throat move. Mom, someone from home helped. For 1 second I did not understand. Home. That word felt too warm for what we were sitting in. Victor's voice stayed quiet. Name. Emily looked at Brent and Brent looked away. That told me plenty. Then she whispered, Greg. I blinked. Greg who? Her eyes filled. Greg Turner. My breath caught in my chest, so suddenly it hurt. Greg Turner was my bank manager in Ohio. He had known me for nearly 11 years. He was the man who always came around the counter to shake my hand. The man who once carried a box to my car when I brought in some old papers. The man who said things like, Take your time, Mrs. Bell, there's no rush. He sent Christmas cards signed by his wife and children. When my husband's old savings account paperwork got complicated, Greg was the one who sat with me for 40 minutes to help sort it out. I trusted him. Not deeply like family, but enough. Enough was all they needed. I leaned back slowly in my chair because the room suddenly felt smaller. No, I said, no, Greg wouldn't. Emily let out a broken sob. He did. Victor opened the folder again and turned a page toward me. Greg Turner provided account timing information, verification notes, and one internal alert window. He did not initiate the transfers himself, but he helped them understand when your bank would flag activity and when it might not. I looked down at the paper. Greg's name was there in black and white, tied to message summaries and phone call times. My vision blurred. This was the part betrayal rarely warns you about. One cruel act does not stay alone, it pulls a whole chain behind it. A daughter, a stranger, a trusted banker, each link making the next one easier. I lifted my face toward Emily. How? Her voice was tiny now. Brent knew someone who knew Greg. At first Greg only gave little information. He said it was harmless, then he needed money too. Brent gave a sharp laugh with no joy in it. That's the thing about decent men who start bending rules, they bend fast. Victor's eyes turned to him. You study weakness like a profession. It is a profession, Brent said coolly. People like you pretend the world runs on honor, it runs on leverage. I felt my stomach twist. Victor did not argue, he simply said, and tonight you lost yours. Brent's jaw tightened. I looked back at the folder again. The pages seemed heavier now. I understood something painful then. This had never just been about one bad daughter making one horrible choice. This was a web, a careful one, and I had walked straight into it because the people weaving it knew exactly which thread to pull. My trust. The tea in front of me had gone cold, but I picked up the cup anyway just to have something steady in my hands. Tell me everything, I said to Emily. No skipping, no softening, all of it. She wiped her face and nodded. Greg helped confirm your balances and account habits. He knew you usually checked your app in the mornings and not late at night. He also knew your bank sometimes delayed alerts on foreign-linked review flags. Brent used that to build a transfer route. The Dubai trip created distance and confusion. If you got stranded, then any bank activity could be blamed on travel panic or bad judgment. My voice came out flatter than I expected, and if I made it home early? Brent answered this time. Then Emily was supposed to keep you calm, delay you, or shift blame. But if you didn't make it home early, your profile became more useful. Useful. Again that word. I was so tired of being useful. Victor folded his hands. Mrs. Bell is not an object in your operation. Speak of her like a human being. For the first time, Brent looked a little unsure. Not afraid yet, just no longer certain he could keep controlling the room. Emily turned back to me. Mom, I swear I didn't want the medical welfare form used. Brent pushed that part. I looked at her for a long time. Maybe she was telling the truth. Maybe she hated that part. Maybe she told herself she still had a line she would never cross. But she had stayed beside a man who was already crossing it. And that matters. A person cannot walk behind evil and then act shocked when their shoes get dirty. Victor rose from his chair and stepped toward the window. The city lights shone behind him, turning his outline dark against the glass. I made some calls while you were reading, he said. A legal team in London is ready. A cybersecurity unit has the device routes, and Ohio authorities have been contacted about Greg Turner. His branch access has already been frozen. Emily gasped, already. Victor turned back. You seem surprised. Brent stood abruptly. You went international over one disrupted transfer. One, Victor asked. You targeted multiple families, vendor chains, and elder accounts across 3 countries. That was new. I looked at Brent sharply. 3 countries. He said nothing. Victor answered for him. Yes, Mrs. Bell, by the middle of tonight you need to understand the full truth. This was not a one-time mistake. It was part of a repeated system. Your daughter became one working part of that system. Emily cried harder at that, but I noticed something important. She did not deny it. That silence said plenty. I sank deeper into my chair. There is a point when pain grows so large it becomes strangely quiet. No screaming inside, no crashing thoughts, just a deep stillness, as if your heart is trying to protect itself by going numb. Then into that stillness, a memory floated up. Emily at age 9, running down the front porch steps in red rain boots, yelling, "Mom, watch me jump the puddle." I saw her at 14 too, sitting cross-legged on my bed after her father died, whispering, "You're not going anywhere too, right?" And then I saw the woman in front of me now, mascara smudged, face tight with panic, hands stained not with mud or tears but with choices. I realized I was grieving two people at once. The daughter I had raised, and the daughter sitting across from me. "Why didn't you come to me?" I asked softly. Emily stared at the floor, because I was ashamed. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, because it was too small an answer for too large a crime. "Ashamed," I repeated, "so instead of telling me you were drowning, you tied bricks to my feet too." Her head jerked up, the pain on her face was real but so was mine. "I didn't think it would go this far," she whispered. I leaned forward. It always goes this far when lies keep getting fed. The room went quiet again. Then Victor's phone buzzed. He checked the screen, then looked at Brent. "Well," he said, "that was quicker than expected." Brent's face changed. "Not much, just enough." The mask slipped. "Fear." Victor set the phone down. "The secondary holding account has been frozen. The Shell vendor chain is exposed. Your contact in Cyprus has stopped answering, and the Ohio branch audit has begun." Brent's voice went low. "You think you've won because you blocked some wires?" Victor's tone remained calm. "No, I think I've won because your network is already saving itself by cutting you loose." That hit Brent harder than anything else had. He lunged for the table. It happened fast. 1 second he was standing there, and the next he was reaching across for the devices Victor had collected. A guard moved instantly, twisting Brent's arm back and forcing him down against the side of the table. Another guard stepped between Brent and the rest of us. Emily screamed. My teacup slipped from my fingers and shattered on the floor. "Enough," Victor snapped. His voice cracked across the room like a whip. Everything stopped. Brent froze, breathing hard, one cheek pressed against the polished wood. Victor stepped closer, not angry in a wild way, but controlled in a way that felt much colder. "You do not get to create this much harm, and then become dramatic when it collapses." The guard straightened Brent but did not release him fully. Emily had both hands over her mouth. I was shaking now, truly shaking, but not from helplessness, from the sheer force of seeing the hidden thing finally come out into the light. This man was not clever anymore. He was cornered. Victor nodded to the guard, and Brent was forced back into his chair. "Sit," Victor said. This time Brent obeyed. Victor turned to Emily next. "Now you decide, full cooperation or you go down beside him with no one left to defend your motives." Emily stared at him through tears. Would it matter? Victor looked at her for a long moment. Truth always matters. It does not erase consequences, but it changes what kind of person walks into them. That sentence struck me. Because that was the heart of it, wasn't it? Not whether Emily could escape the consequences. She could not. But whether there was any honest piece of her left to save. Emily drew in one shaky breath after another. Then she reached into her handbag again. "There's more," she said. She pulled out a small envelope, thinner than the first one. My stomach tightened. I was beginning to hate envelopes. She slid it across the table toward me. Inside was a folded paper and a key card. I opened the paper first. It was a hotel reservation in my name. But not at the Palm Meridian. At a cheap airport hotel across the city. 3 nights. 1 room. No return transport. No phone listed. No emergency contact. My chest tightened so painfully, I thought for a second I might faint. "That was where you planned to leave me," I said. Emily began sobbing again. "Brent said it was safer than the airport." "Safer?" I closed my eyes. The mercy of dishonest people is always built to protect themselves first. Victor asked, "And the key card?" Emily whispered, "Storage locker at the event venue. Copies of IDs, backup devices, cash." Victor looked toward one of his guards. "Take it." The guard stepped forward and collected the key card. Then Victor looked back at Emily, and the last piece. Emily froze. I saw it instantly. There was still one more thing. One more truth she was holding back. I stood up without meaning to. My knees felt weak, but I stayed upright. "What last piece?" I asked. Emily's face crumpled completely. "Mom," she said, "the first transfer that went through." She stopped. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it. "Say it," I whispered. Her lips shook. Then she said the words that made the whole room tilt around me. "It wasn't only your money. It wasn't only your money." For a second, I truly did not understand what Emily meant. The words reached me, but they did not settle. They floated in the air between us like something broken loose from the rest of the sentence. Then my mouth went dry. "What do you mean?" I asked. Emily could barely look at me. The first transfer that cleared, it was partly from the education trust Dad left. My knees almost gave way. "Daniel, my husband. Before he died, he had set aside money in a small trust for future grandchildren, or if there were no grandchildren, for family education and emergencies. It was not millions, it was not flashy, but it mattered. It was old, careful money built from overtime shifts, years of savings and missed luxuries. My husband used to joke that every dollar in that account had a story behind it. And now Emily was telling me she had helped steal from that too. I sat down very slowly. "That was your father's money," I whispered. Emily started crying harder. "I know." "No," I said, and my voice came out sharper than I expected. "You know now, but you did it then." That silenced her. Victor stood at the far end of the table, watching quietly. He was giving me room. I appreciated that more than I can explain. Brent looked away, maybe bored, maybe irritated, maybe simply waiting for the next chance to save himself. But I was no longer looking at him much. My eyes were on Emily. Because this was the deepest wound. A stranger can rob you. A criminal can target you. A banker can betray professional trust. But only your own child can reach backward into your happiest years, and poison them too. I pressed my fingertips to my forehead. I thought of Daniel sitting at our old dining table, checking papers with his reading glasses halfway down his nose. I heard his laugh in my memory. I saw his hands, rough from work, folding trust documents into a neat envelope. He had not been a rich man. He had been a careful man. He believed money should protect people after you were gone. And Emily had used it as a hiding place. Victor finally spoke. "Can the transfer be reversed?" Emily sniffed and wiped her face. "Part of it can, if Brent gives up the second routing codes and the storage device. The rest depends on how fast the freeze went through." Victor turned to Brent. "You heard her." Brent gave a tired little smile. "And if I say no?" Victor's expression did not change. "Then the night becomes uglier for you than you planned." Brent held his gaze for a long moment. Then, for the first time, he seemed to understand that the performance was over. No smooth words, no clever turns, no easy exit. He exhaled and leaned back. "The codes are in the backup device," he said. "Lock a key card plus a 6-digit access layer." Victor nodded once. "Write it down." A guard slid paper and a pen across the table. Brent hesitated, then wrote. It was almost disappointing in its plainness. So much harm. So much fear. And in the end, it came down to numbers scribbled on hotel stationery. Victor handed the paper to one of his guards. "Go." The guard left at once. Then Victor made another call right there in front of us. His voice stayed calm and clipped as he gave instructions. Legal team, recovery unit, authorities, branch audit, device intercept. I did not understand every term, but I understood enough. The money trail was breaking open. The lies were being pinned down. And for the first time since the airport, I felt something I had not felt all day. As if my chest could open a little again. Emily was still crying quietly, but I did not rush to comfort her. That may sound harsh, but it was the truth of that moment. Mothers often move toward their children's pain on instinct. Mine did too, but another truth had finally grown stronger. Not every tear deserves immediate rescue. Some tears are the doorway a person must walk through after what they have done. I folded my hands and looked at her. Tell me something honestly. She nodded without lifting her head. When you invited me on this trip, did any part of you still love me? That made her look up fast. Yes, she said at once. Yes, Mom, I love you. I held her gaze. Then why did you treat me like a piece on a board? She opened her mouth but no words came. Finally she whispered, because I kept splitting myself in two, the part that loved you and the part that wanted the money. I kept telling myself I could manage both. I kept telling myself I would fix it later. There it was. Not a good answer. Not a noble one. But a true one. People destroy their lives that way every day, by believing they can do something ugly now and clean it up later, by believing love will still count even after betrayal, by believing apology can arrive after damage and somehow erase it. It cannot. Victor ended his call and turned back to us. The locker team has entered the storage unit. Devices confirmed, cache confirmed, multiple IDs confirmed. Brent shut his eyes. Victor continued, the secondary account is now locked. Recovery is in motion. Emily looked at me then, desperate and raw. Mom, I'm sorry. I had heard those words from her before. After lies. After borrowed money. After missed promises. After manipulations wrapped in tears. I believed her sorrow this time, I truly did, but sorrow is not the same as repair. I know you're sorry, I said. You're sorry because the truth caught up, but I need to know whether one day you will be sorry because you finally understand what you did to me. Emily broke into fresh sobs. Brent muttered, this is useless. Victor's head turned. No, this is the only useful thing in the room. Then came the next surprise. Victor pulled out a chair and sat directly across from Brent. Let's discuss your options, he said. Brent gave a tired laugh. You think I'm negotiating? No, Victor said, I think you're finished, but finished men sometimes become honest. That made me sit a little straighter. Victor slid a document across the table. These are summary findings already prepared for authorities in Dubai, London, and the United States. They include elder targeting, identity misuse, account fraud, cross-border routing, and conspiracy. If you cooperate fully, that will be noted. If you do not, every silence becomes part of the file. Brent stared at the papers. He was smart enough to understand what that meant. For the first time, there was no smugness left in him at all. Only calculation. Then defeat. He gave a bitter little smile. Fine, Greg wasn't the only one. 2 temporary vendor staff in London, 1 call center contact in Cyprus, a travel admin in New Jersey. Emily handled family-side access better than anyone. Emily flinched as if he had slapped her. But Victor only nodded to a guard, who wrote it all down. The whole rotten web was finally being dragged into the light. And suddenly I understood what my revenge really was. Not screaming. Not slapping. Not making a scene. Not even destroying Emily. My revenge was this. They had counted on my silence, confusion, age, and panic. Instead, I stayed, I listened, I faced it, and because I did, their whole system began to collapse. That is one of life's hardest lessons. Sometimes the strongest revenge is not becoming cruel in return. It is refusing to remain the easy victim. About 20 minutes later, Victor got another message. He read it, then looked at me. Mrs. Bell, he said, most of the transferred funds have been frozen in time. The trust portion appears recoverable. Your primary account loss is being reversed pending confirmation. I covered my mouth and let out a shaky breath. Not all of it lost. Not Daniel's careful years. Not everything. I had not realized how tightly I had been bracing myself for total ruin until that moment. Emily started to say something, but I raised my hand. No. She stopped. I need you to hear me clearly, I said. The money matters, your father's trust matters, but the deepest damage is not what you tried to take. It is what you made me feel. Alone, disposable, embarrassing, easy to abandon. She wept openly. I was scared, she whispered. So was I answered, but I did not become you. That line sat between us for a long, long moment. Then Victor's security team received instructions. Authorities were on the way. Statements would be taken. Devices would be logged. Brent would be handed over. Emily too, though Victor quietly told the team that her cooperation should be documented in full. I noticed that. He was not rescuing her. He was being fair. That mattered to me. When the guards moved to stand Brent up, he looked at me once, perhaps expecting rage or pleading or some final speech. I gave him none. I simply said, "You built your plans around people thinking older women are weak." He said nothing. "You were wrong." That was enough. They took him out first. Then Emily stood. For a second she looked like she wanted to run to me, hug me, fall at my knees, something dramatic and childish and desperate. But she stopped herself, maybe because she knew she no longer had the right, maybe because she finally understood that love does not erase consequence. "Mom," she whispered, "will you ever forgive me?" The room went still. It was the question she had really been asking all night. I answered honestly, because lies had done enough damage already. "I don't know," I said. She closed her eyes. "I love you," she whispered. I felt tears rise again, but this time I let them come without shame. "I loved you on the worst day of my life," I said. "That was never the issue. The issue is whether you will ever become someone safe to love." Emily cried harder at that than at anything else I had said. Then the officers came for her too. She went quietly. No shouting. No dramatic collapse. Just a broken woman walking into the consequences of her own choices. After they left, the room felt enormous and strangely peaceful. I sat there in silence for a while, looking out at the glittering city. Dubai was still beautiful. That surprised me. I had thought betrayal might stain the whole place forever, but pain does not own every corner of the world. Sometimes one night can be terrible without stealing all beauty from the sky. Victor poured fresh tea for me himself. "Thank you," I said. He gave a small nod. "You did the hard part." "No," I said softly. "I think I'm only beginning it." He accepted that. A little later, he arranged for a proper suite for me in the hotel, a real return flight, direct banking protection, and contact with authorities back home. He asked if I wanted him to notify anyone in Ohio. "Gloria," I said at once. He almost smiled. "The friend who warned you." "Yes, that sounds wise." He made the call. The next morning, after hardly any sleep, I stood by the window in a clean hotel robe with the city spread out below me like glass and gold. The sun rose slowly. My face in the mirror looked tired but different. Older maybe. Sadder, yes, but also clearer. I kept thinking about the airport. About how small and frightened I had felt when Victor first stepped near me. "Pretend you're my wife for 1 minute." What a strange sentence to begin the saving of my life. Of course, I was never really pretending to belong to him. That part had only been cover in the moment, but what he truly offered me was something much bigger. A bridge. A way out of humiliation and into truth. 3 weeks later, back in Ohio, the full consequences had settled in. Greg Turner lost his position and faced charges connected to financial misconduct. Brent's network was exposed wider than he expected, because once one frightened man starts talking, others do too. Emily entered legal trouble of her own, though her cooperation and confession changed some of what followed. I visited her only once in those early weeks. She looked smaller somehow. Not physically. Spiritually. She cried and apologized again. I listened. I did not promise forgiveness. I did not slam the door either. I simply told her the truth. "If you want any future with me," I said, "it will not be built on tears. It will be built on years of honesty." She nodded like someone who finally understood how long real repair takes. As for me, I did something unexpected. I changed my accounts, yes, I updated paperwork, I made legal protections stronger, I moved money where it needed to be safe, but I also did something for my own heart. I took a small part of the recovered funds, and started a reading corner at the local library in Daniel's name, with free tutoring support for children and grandparents raising kids. It was not grand, just warm chairs, good lamps, shelves, and help for families who needed a soft place to land. When Gloria asked why, I told her the truth. Because I refused to let the last chapter of my husband's care be theft. And then I laughed a little and added, also because revenge is sweeter when it grows flowers out of dirt. Gloria laughed so hard she nearly dropped her coffee. That was the first real laugh I had after Dubai. It felt wonderful. So here is the lesson I learned, and I learned it the hardest way possible. Love without truth becomes a weapon in the wrong hands. Silence protects the guilty more than the wounded. And being kind does not mean being easy to destroy. My daughter thought my age made me helpless. Brent thought my trust made me useful. Greg thought my politeness made me safe to betray. They were all wronged. I was wounded, yes. But I was not weak. And in the end, the woman they planned to leave stranded came home with her name, her truth, and most of her life restored. That was my revenge. Not that they suffered, but that I survived what they meant to bury me under. And I did it standing up. The end.